Hello again. Now, in the aftermath of KwaZulu Natal's deadly floods, communities across eThekwini woke up to dry taps and power failures this morning. Many schools have been closed after infrastructure was ravaged. In fact, the latest we have from the provincial department, I just interviewed the Muzi Mahlambi. It's 262 schools in the whole province have been badly damaged. Now, let's discuss how much of this is due to the shortcomings by local government. Lukhona Mnguni is a political analyst, and he's got some views to share with us this hour here on Today on eNCA. Lukhona, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. I guess, as we are unpacking the aftermath of these devastating floods, we also wonder if we were better prepared at many levels, infrastructure-wise and also planning-wise. Maybe the impact could not have been this bad. So we are asking ourselves, could local government, for example, the eThekwini municipality, could have been better prepared for such a natural disaster?
Good afternoon, Braden, and afternoon to your viewers. Absolutely, we can always do better. We can always improve in terms of our responsiveness to this kind of crisis. We do know that in KwaZulu Natal, we have seen a number of floods over the last decade. This means that there ought to be a development of a planned development of responses in terms of how do you make sure that you respond swiftly to these issues. So in terms of the structuring of the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, you do have a disaster management center at a provincial level, housed in Pietermaritzburg, and all your districts are meant to have good capacity in terms of disaster management. And we must be asking a number of questions. I remember, for example, people in Durban asking, this is probably 12, 13 years ago, asking where are evacuation plans, for example, for the Durban South Basin, which, of course, houses a number of very, serious plants like the SAPREF, where you've got chemicals being handled, you've got oil being handled, you've got factories there, and people were asking, in an event of a disaster that needs evacuation, do we have evacuation plans for the Durban South Basin? And the answer was no. And I can imagine that we probably don't have evacuation plans for a number of areas. That's why some of the people who were being interviewed by Spamandla Goge, for example, yesterday, were complaining that they have not been given shelter as places for them to sleep because the movement of our responsiveness is so slow. And it means that we are actually not prepared to deal with disasters, because the moment a disaster occurs, Braden, you don't even need a declaration of a state of disaster. You just need your disaster management centers to kick into gear. Those joint operations that then come with the declaration and legislative demands then get to be put in place, because you can imagine some people have lost documents, so they can't even prove that they are South African citizens, so they need to have documentation printed out. They need support from the Department of Social Development. They need support from housing, human settlements, and all other composite departments that can assist in a period like this.
Yeah, very comprehensive answer there. That makes me wonder, perhaps that is why the president yesterday in Zuma was talking about the need to ramp up the government's disaster management as a whole, and when he was talking about climate change. But as you said, the people of Durban were asking for an evacuation plan about 12 or 13 years ago already. It's like they were anticipating that we're going to be facing more and more disaster. But it's clearly absent at this stage, like it's a reaction rather than to have proactively provided people well in advance with warnings, and then, as you said, for example, prepared temporary shelter with tents. The people of Reservoir Hills were protesting this morning. Dasen Tatia is there. They are saying they haven't seen anybody, and they live in those shacks along that waterway, and they've lost everything, and there's still no effective response for them practically on the ground, like for temporary accommodation.
Well, but then this is what happens when you don't have a leadership with good foresight. Activists have been doing a lot of work. I sit on the board of Oxfam South Africa, and Oxfam South Africa has been engaging with SALGA for some time now around these issues of preparedness for disasters by local government. It seems as if a lot of the work has to be done externally. Then people have to advocate to a government, because it's quite clear within government there's not enough foresight, there's not enough long-term planning, and there's not enough viewing of how to handle disasters. So we know that KwaZulu Natal has dealt with a number of isolated incidents, particularly when it comes to lightning strikes and thunder. And, you know, the MEC for Kokta at the time, Nomusa Dube, this is some years back now, she was quite concerned about this issue, and she was trying to ramp up the province's preparedness for that. But there wasn't comprehensive planning for other types of disasters. And I think now these issues are no longer isolated incidents. They are happening and affecting a great deal of communities. And it's time that all our spheres of government, from local, provincial, and national, really think through what the future of South Africa will look like. And not just KwaZulu Natal. I mean, I'm talking to people who are telling me that the situation is quite bad in Port St. John's in the Eastern Cape, for example, which is also close to sea in the east coast of South Africa. So we really have to be quite proactive in how we are thinking about being solutions driven, and also seek expertise from other jurisdictions around the world that have been dealing with disasters of this nature.
As usual, thank you very much for your insights this hour and analysis. That's Lukhona Mnguni, as we look at what could be done better going forward to manage these kind of scenarios like we've just seen, this natural disaster, the tragic natural disaster, killing more than 300 people. The numbers are still being tallied. And I mean, millions and millions, if not billions, of rands of infrastructure damage as well.